And hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. The 1970s are generally regarded by music critics, commentators and artists as the absolute peak of the reggae genre. It's an opinion also held by you wonderful viewers, as evidenced in a poll that we put up a while back, and one which I strongly agree with. In that wonderful decade, we had an astonishing level of quality matching a yet to be equaled rate of quantity by the greatest artists in the pantheon of reggae's greatest icons. But from that decade, the year 1976 stands out as a time frame that produced the best of the very best. Ironically, it was one of the most violent years in Jamaica's history, as the beautiful island was rocked by political violence waged between street gangs loyal to the JLP and PNP political parties in the run-up to the elections in that year. But as is well known, the inspiration that creates great art often springs from adversity, and in the case of Jamaica, it all poured into reggae music and sparked a huge explosion of creativity in such a short time, and the shockwaves of that year continue to reverberate till this day. During the making of this video, I was stunned at the scale of brilliance recorded in just 12 months. A truly once-in-a-lifetime year when incredible musicians collided with mythical instrumentalists, out-of-this-world producers, and Jamaica's greatest studios to set the tone for reggae's ultimate year. Let's take a look at the high points of that amazing year. The brilliance of 1976 started out with the release of the first of many albums that would be listed among the greatest ever. And that particular album was Right Time by the Mighty Diamonds. That trio had been recording for producer Ja Lion, aka Ja Lloyd, but in 1975, recognizing his lack of ability and marketing power to really push the trio to success, he would introduce them to Channel 1 Studios, which was owned by the Hookin brothers. At the time, that studio not only had the most advanced recording equipment in Jamaica, but also had in its ranks an elite in-house band called the Revolutionaries. This band has some of the best instrumentalists, including a young Sly Dunbar and Robbie Shakespeare. Sly Dunbar in particular had just perfected a new style of drumming called rockers, which would take the world by storm, and one of the first projects on which Sly unleashed it was the Mighty Diamonds' Right Time album. The outstanding instrumentals, combined with the trio's exquisite voices, resulted in the groundbreaking and brilliant masterpiece Right Time, which hit the record stores on the 7th of January 1976. But before that month was over, another elite musician in the glorious partnership with a genius producer and an equally devastating in-house band from a legendary studio would bring the heat in a major way. Max Romeo, equally inspired and traumatized by his disappointment in then Prime Minister Michael Manley and the terrible violence sweeping over Jamaica, began to write the songs that would make up his masterpiece album War in a Babylon. He had recorded a song with eccentric producer Lee Scratch Perry for his album Revelation Time. But for his next album, he would team up with Perry for the entire project. Max Romeo had burst into the limelight with his slack monster hit Wet Dream, but had undergone a slow but steady transformation over the years to more serious topics. And by 1975, he had done a full 180-degree turn into serious Rasta-conscious material. Lee Scratch Perry had not long before then opened his now legendary Black Ark Studios and was displaying genius levels of production skills and eccentricity to create immortal sound. Ably backed by his amazing in-house band, The Upsetters, they started work on Max Romeo's new album, and by the end of January 1976, they released War in a Babylon. In the history of roots reggae, it's gone down as one of the most fiery, radical, and mesmerizing reggae albums ever recorded. It was the first of a trio of albums described as the Holy Trinity of Lee Scratch Perry, a term popularly used to describe that producer's greatest creations. Following closely on the heels of Max Romeo's Scorcher was the incredible Trenchtown Mixup by the Gladiators. This group, led by Albert Griffiths, had cut its teeth as in-house musicians at Studio One and had worked with Lee Scratch Perry and other producers before catching the attention of Virgin Records in January 1976. They went to work at Joe Gibbs' studio and teamed up with a star lineup of elite musicians that included Sly Dunbar and Lloyd Parks to play on the songs that would go into the debut album Trenchtown Mixup, a record simply bursting with hits like Looks Is Deceiving, Rude Boy Scar, Chatty Chatty Mouth, and an outstanding cover of the Wailers track Soul Rebel, which I personally believe better than the original. Ultimately, a phenomenal compilation of songs that didn't shy away from addressing the political turmoil in Jamaica, though the powerful lyrics were masterfully delivered in metaphors, parables, and folkloric phases, beautifully woven together by Albert Griffiths. Simply another masterpiece of that wonderful year. And when it seemed the best had already come, the king of reggae himself would throw his hat in the ring with a vengeance. On April the 30th, 1976, Bob Marley and the Wailers would release the hard-hitting and phenomenal Rastaman Vibration album, Bob's second since the exit of Peter and Bunny. It was recorded at Joe Gibbs' studio and featured Bob Marley in scorching form, pouring out among the most radical lyrics of his career until the release of the Survival album 3 years later, with tracks like Crazy Bald Head, Who the Cap Fits, Cry to Me, and Roots Rock Reggae. It became a great commercial success as well as critical smash that reached number 8 on the US Billboard charts. The same month, Burning Spear would unleash his classic Garvey's Ghost, which is simply another roots reggae masterpiece. And not long after that, probably the most controversial album in the history of reggae music would be released in the form of Peter Tosh's debut album, Legalize It, which came out in June of that year. It was Peter's long-awaited debut album since parting ways with the Wailers 3 years earlier, and for its time, it was the most shocking album that anybody had ever seen. It was simply bold, in-your-face musical advocacy for the legalization of herb, a root reggae classic with excellent songs powered by background vocals from Bunny Wailer and the I3s. Not to mention the exquisite instrumentals from Sly and Robbie, as well as Aston Barrett and Carlton Barrett, among others. Not only was the music shocking, but the album cover was on a different level as it featured Tosh in his natural habitat, a field of herb. Definitely among the most iconic album covers we will ever see. Also in the same month of June, U-Roy released his album NTI Rebel, which is one of his most radical and most beloved albums, a fiery 11-track compilation with iconic U-Roy cuts like Go There Natty, Fire in a Trench Town, Babylon Burning, and Natty Kung Fu. Of course, ably backed up by wonderful instrumentalists, complete with an awesome drum set, courtesy of Sly Dunbar. And seriously, a special shout out has to go to Sly and Robbie, who came into their own that year as the world-beating rhythm twins, who played on many of the classics in that year. And Sly Dunbar in particular did incredible stuff with his rockers drumming style, which became the rave for years. Just like his childhood friend and ex-colleague Peter Tosh, Bunny Wailer also emerged in 1976 with his outstanding debut album Black Heart Man that remains simply one of the finest roots reggae compilations in reggae's golden era that established Bunny as one of the elite artists in his field, at par with his ex-bandmates Bob and Peter. And to many commentators, Black Heart Man was actually the best reggae album of that year. The amazing momentum and creativity of that year wasn't limited to Jamaica, by the way. Across the oceans in England, the children of Caribbean immigrants were set to unleash their own brand of reggae energy across the globe. In that year, it came in the form of Asward, who released their self-titled debut album on Island Records. It wasn't just a classic roots reggae album, but the body of work that literally opened the floodgates for UK reggae bands like Steel Pulse and Misty in Roots to show that they could bring it just as hot as their Jamaican cousins could do. The year 1976 was an unbelievably prolific year in reggae music, and it would take a week-long video to do justice to all the great material. But I must give honorary mentions to a few incredible albums like Tenement Yard by Jacob Miller, Natty Cultural Dread by Big Youth, Satan Masagana by the Abyssinians, CB200 by Dillinger, Super 8 by Lee Scratch Perry and the Upsetters, Psalms for I by Prince Far I, and Reggae Got Soul by Toots and the Maytals. And I haven't even scratched the surface. It was a year marked by terrible violence and dirty politics, but ironically, it was sweetened by a deluge of incredible music. At the end of that year, Bob Marley almost paid with his life for his attempt to bring peace to his country with music, as he was preparing to go play a show aimed at promoting peace. But bravely, he still performed at the Smile Jamaica concert a few days later before proceeding on self-imposed exile. What a year! The greats and the legends delivered their best performances, and even the hundreds or even thousands of lesser known artists would also put out music that I honestly believe would outclass and eclipse the best of today's reggae music. And not that better songs or albums weren't released in previous or even subsequent years, but it's simply impossible to find so many and such quality music all rolled into one year, truly lending more weight to that general assertion that 1976 was truly reggae's greatest year. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, God bless.